Over the months and years, I've talked a lot about game companies that have been struggling because either their business antics are shady and more people are beginning to recognize that, or because their creative ideas have grown stale, or their game launches have just been really rough. But there's one company that I feel like is worth highlighting right now because they're currently on a freaking roll and they're kind of killing it out there. And that's Capcom, and there's nothing that shows this more than their recent financial results that highlight a company that just keeps growing and are releasing all the right kinds of games, if you ask me. So this right here is a report from Video Games Chronicle published on May 10th, 2023, titled Capcom Confirms Record Number of Game Sales as Share Price Hits an All-Time High. And Capcom kind of very proudly broke this down and talked about how they've broken a brand new record. This is the most games they've ever sold in a given year in the company's history. And this is referring to the year that ended on March 31st, 2023. The Resident Evil publisher said it had sold 41.7 million games during the 12-month period, and that's up, like significantly up, from 32.6 million games the previous fiscal year, breaking its record for the most games sold in a business year ever. And this is a consecutive year in which the number of sales and the revenues and all that have risen, the 6th consecutive year of record high profit at all levels, and its 10th consecutive year of operating income growth. They have not missed a step in the last decade when it comes to just the business side of things, at the very least. And when it comes to their game releases, honestly, they've all been incredibly solid. Recently, we saw the release of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is being heralded as one of the best, if not the best, remakes of all time. I mean, you go to Steam right now, you'll find an overwhelmingly positive review score from 50,000 user reviews. That's across the board, and even recent reviews are overwhelmingly positive. On Metacritic, you can see that the scores are very positive across both PC and PlayStation 5. This is a game that's just selling incredibly well, has made a huge impression on people, and really revitalized a classic title that is good in its own right, but they remade it so well that, it's worth going through that journey again for those who've already played this game. And for newcomers, this is without a doubt the best way to experience it in more ways than not. And so the Resident Evil 4 Remake absolutely killed. Monster Hunter has been on the rise, no pun intended, with Monster Hunter World kind of setting the groundwork for Monster Hunter becoming more mainstream. And then Rise came in on Switch and then on PC. It eventually came to consoles as well after the Switch timed exclusivity was over, so it's more accessible than ever. And respectively, Resident Evil 4 and Monster Hunter Rise sold 3.75 million and 5.45 million units during this fiscal year. On top of that, it's not just new games that have carried Capcom. Their older titles continue to sell because, well, they're good. They're still worth buying, and new people keep discovering them. The vast majority of its sales, in fact, came from catalog titles, which Capcom defines as games released in the previous fiscal year or earlier. Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, and Devil May Cry, those series combined, that's kind of what carried so much of the dozens of millions of sales that Capcom made in this latest fiscal year. The catalog titles encompassed 29.3 million units sold, and then it was the newer titles that made up for the remaining 12.4 million in sales. You make a game that excels and people keep buying them for years and years to come. There's a reason why Nintendo games have such a long shelf span. There's a reason why Witcher 3 continues to sell in the millions to this day, and Cyberpunk, now that they've finally, brought it back and they've fixed its issues, it's seeing signs of a long shelf span as well. Capcom, I feel, is slowly positioning themselves to be in that position where so many of their recent releases like Resident Evil 2 Remake and Devil May Cry 5 and whatnot have been so good. Resident Evil 4 Remake took a classic and made it into a modern classic. These are all just games that have the ability to remain relevant for many years to come. It's also highlighted here that a vast majority of Capcom's game sales were digital, 89.4% in fact, and this is kind of where the world is trending. I do still believe that physical editions are important and that they shouldn't be an option that should be removed. Just like how with movies and shows, yes, most people are streaming stuff nowadays, but you can still get the Blu-rays for your favorite shows and movies. That's still an option, and same with video games for those who prefer a physical medium to have more of a sense of ownership over the game data. Physical edition should be a thing, and I think they will always be a thing, but the vast majority of people just like the convenience of having those games digitally, being able to download them and not having to look for the disc or the cartridge or whatever. So that's kind of it is what it is. But yeah, all things considered, very good business results for Capcom. And beyond that, people who have been playing Capcom games are happy. Devil May Cry 5 was a big success critically. Resident Evil remakes have been a big success critically. Monster Hunter has been a big success recently. And Capcom also seems to be doing a good job of making sure that these games launch when they're ready. Their major game releases so far have never felt like they needed a couple more months in the oven, save for, occasional minor issues here and there. Generally, it's felt like their game releases have been very polished and, met quality standards that should be met for games that are priced at $60 to $70. Street Fighter is seeing a new resurgence. Street Fighter 6, tons of positive reception. I think this game's going to do incredibly well, and Capcom believes so too, stating here that they aim to sell 10 million copies of Street Fighter 6, which would break the series record of 7 million met by Street Fighter 5. I think Street Fighter 6 will easily accomplish that with all of the positive buzz that it's been getting, with all of the cool features that they've been adding to the game, character customization, and all of these fun elements that makes it feel like this virtual world where it just evokes the vibes of the good old days when you sit down at the arcade with your friends and just look forward to doing that every week. I mean, the game literally allows you to, with your custom characters, kind of walk around and find people in this shared world hub and challenge them to a battle, sit down at these virtual arcades. And I don't know, it's just the vibe that Street Fighter 6 evokes is really good. The new gameplay tweaks that they've made, the art style that they've gone with, and just how fun the game's been to play. Even for me, who's kind of fallen out of Street Fighter, and with 6, I'm feeling that resurgence of, oh man, I might actually want to play Street Fighter again. I think this game's going to do incredibly well, so I think the best is yet to come for Capcom. In fact, Capcom is confident that they expect to break records for sales and profit again in its current fiscal year ending in March 31st, 2024. They think they'll do better yet again. And Street Fighter 6, no doubt, is a big part of why they're so confident, but they've got new IPs coming out like Exo Primal, which is coming out in July. And then beyond that, if you look at their slate of upcoming releases, there is Pragmata, which is supposed to come out in 2023. It's this weird-looking sci-fi game that we still don't know much about, but the kinds of games that Capcom has been outputting have been compelling, either because they've found new ways to revitalize existing IPs or because they're introducing new IPs that do look compelling and interesting. Like Pragmata, I'm actually pretty interested in. I hope they actually nail this one because it has a very compelling concept behind it based on the teaser trailer that I've seen. And it's not just players who are excited. Investors are seeing that Capcom is on a roll, which is why Capcom stock hit an all-time high today after it announced record-breaking results. Another all-time high. You can see right here that the climb has been consistent for some time now, and it just keeps climbing because investors are realizing that there's so much positive sentiment generally surrounding Capcom games, and the games have been critically acclaimed. They seem to continue to be so, and Capcom seems to be focused on the right things when it comes to games. There are a few hitches here and there, like when I talked about their de novo stuff that they keep doing, which is not a problem unique to Capcom, and occasional introduction of dumb little microtransactions like in Resident Evil 4, and they've done this with previous titles that don't ultimately detract from just how good the base game is, but it's still kind of dumb that they keep adding these little microtransactions. And those little hitches aside, Capcom's just been killing it. They're not following trends, I feel. You know what I mean? They know what they're about. They know what IPs to find them, and they're bringing the best out of them, and they're doing what fans love about these series justice. I just hope they keep going on this roll, and I hope more companies kind of adapt Capcom's model of just releasing great games so that more and more people can become attracted to their IPs rather than stagnating in ideas like Ubisoft has been doing or partaking in shady business tactics like plenty of publishers have been doing with their live service releases or whatever, that focus on player engagement above just the most fun experience possible. That's just the right length. That is just the right kind of experience for the genre that they're going for. I feel like we're seeing a few companies wake up a little bit to reality. Like EA has been a little more focused lately on those, on just quality games that are not hyper monetized. They recently released Dead Space Remake, which was a huge success, also considered one of the best remakes of all time. And then Jedi Survivor unfortunately launched, I think, a little bit too early because of its performance issues, but once that's patched out, the game itself from Respawn is actually really, really freaking good, and just an improvement across the board from the generally beloved Jedi Fallen Order. So, EA's got some stuff cooking there, and it feels like they're no longer pushing for this narrative that single-player titles are dead, story-driven, linear experiences, whatever. People don't want that stuff anymore. It couldn't be more clear than in recent years that those kinds of experiences people covet. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, recently, we saw some sales figures from the UK. Best-selling Zelda game ever, basically best-selling game of this year already. And it's increasingly clear that those kinds of experiences will never go away. And Capcom is focused on those, but also, making sure that their multiplayer-focused stuff like Street Fighter 6 it's actually just really fun and really refined, and it introduces some cool new features that really takes the IP to the next level. Capcom, keep at it. Don't stop this roll. Don't follow other companies' trends. Do your thing. Do what you've been doing. Continue to lean on the strengths of your IPs and just keep improving and enhancing where need be. And hopefully more third-party publishers will follow this kind of similar model and realize that, you make quality games. People will gravitate towards them. You make games that feel fresh and that respect the identity of the IPs that they represent, and people will, they'll spread the word. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Capcom's recent successes, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.